Hello and welcome back to Mastering AWS featuring S3. Today we are going to do a few different things. We're going to install Atom, which we talked about in the last lecture. We need to install Node, and then initialize npm, install AWS, and then we can actually get into creating different buckets and listing buckets and creating options. So let's get started. So I'm sure you're wondering what node.js is. Basically, it gives you the ability to build scalable applications. You download Node, and then you can download additional modules, think libraries, in order to create applications of your choosing. So the first thing you need to do is click download. Again, it predicts or knows our operating system. So click current. And you may have a different version by the time you're viewing this, and that's okay. And again, that'll show up in your downloads folder. And when it's ready, you'll be able to unpack it. And so since I already have it installed, I am not going to reinstall it just to avert any possible issues. So what you want to do now is pause the video until you have your node completely installed. Alright, so hopefully by now you have Node completely installed. What we're going to do next is we are going to go back to the command line and we're going to initialize Node. And to do that, you go into the folder. You can create a folder, or you can go into the folder that we discussed in the last lecture. And you type in npm init, that initializes. And what I do, just because we're in testing and development stage, I'm just going to hit enter all the way through. And this is going to set up your Node package manager in your local folder. And so if I type in ls, you can see it installed a package.json file. That file refers to all of the different npm modules that you have installed. And so if we open that up, that would be a huge, well, it would actually be a small JSON file at this point because we don't have anything in it. But as we went through installing different modules, again, think libraries if you're familiar with a different system, you would see that we would have a number of different things installed. And so what we're going to do next is we're actually going to install two modules. We're going to install AWS because we need it for Amazon, and we're going to install this module called UUID. And what that module does is it gives us a random string of characters, letters, numbers, and dashes. And the reason why we need that is because, as you remember, S3 bucket names need to be unique. You can never have another bucket name anywhere in the AWS world. So we'll need to download those two things. And what we actually can do is we can type in npm. If we go to npmjs.com, I am going to type in AWS. Then if we click on AWS SDK, we need to install npm AWS-SDK. And to do that, you can just click on it, and it'll say it's copied to the clipboard. We're going to go back to our terminal, and we are going to paste that into our terminal. And again, this enables us to use the AWS SDK. Then while that's working, I'm going to type in UUID. I'll click UUID. And again, this is for, if I scroll down a little bit, this is to have a random string of letters and numbers. So it looks like that worked successfully. I am just going to install UUID. And boom, that's installed. It actually worked much quicker. When you think about AWS SDK, it basically contains all of the different services that Amazon offers. So that's why they can take a little bit of time. Let's create a new file in Atom. All right, now that we are back in our Atom IDE/text editor, what we are going to do is we're going to create a new file. So we're going to type save as. And now you want to save this wherever you just created that npm initialized and where you added the node modules folder. So as you can see, it's in testing 1, 2, 3. What I'm going to do is I'm going to type in basic.js and then hit save. Then as you can see over on our left hand side, we have the folder and then all of the different files in the folder. You want to make sure that you never modify these node modules because that can cause many issues going forward for you. So we just have our basic.js which we just created, and then we have our package.json. It displays the folder, the version that we're using, and then we just hit yes through all of this. And you can see here the AWS SDK and the version, as well as a UUID. So let's go back to basic.js. And the first thing we're going to type in is var capital AWS equals require AWS/SDK. So basically what this means is we are using the module, we're requiring the module that we just downloaded. And so you have to type it in var AWS equals require AWS-SDK in that exact format. And then we're going to do the same thing for the var UUID. Var UUID equals require UUID. Now don't forget to add in the parentheses. If you do not add in the parentheses, you will receive an error when we go to run this. So the next thing that we want to do is we want to add in a config, an AWS config. This is basically setting the configuration for our services that we're going to use. We are going to set the region at US East 1. Make sure you add in the comma there. Then we're going to add in the access key ID, colon. So if you recall from last section, we needed our access key ID as well as our secret access key when we configured our EC2 instance. I'm going to use those exact same keys here in this section. So what you should have done in the last section was download an Excel file or a CSV file that had the access key ID as well as the secret access key. If you do not have that, if you deleted it or threw it away, you can always generate a new access key ID and secret access key by going back into the IAM service, and you can always generate a new key that way. One thing to note about that is that you can only have 2 active keys going at the same time. So if you go back, if you navigate to the IAM section and you try and create a new key and it doesn't let you, that's because that means you have 2 keys already active. What you'll need to do is you'll need to delete one of those 2 keys so that you can get another one. And then download that to your downloads folder, open it up. Again, it'll be an Excel or a CSV file. And you'll need, again, the access key ID as well as the secret access key in order to continue on and for this to work. I am going to copy and paste my secret access key and secret access key ID over. And then again, make sure you do not forget the commas at the end. If you don't have them, that will cause an issue. So now that we have that, I'm just going to save that. The next thing that we need is I need to set a variable for S3. I need to let this service know, I need to let my program know that we want to use the S3 service. And to do that, you type in var S3 equals new AWS.S3. Now the AWS, this capital AWS refers to this AWS right here, which refers to the AWS SDK we just downloaded. Just in case if you were wondering. The next thing we want to do is I want to list all of my buckets that I have. Again, you'd want to use an SDK if you were running or creating a larger program. Let's say you had a website or web server, and you wanted to, every time someone signed up, you wanted to create a bucket for them and then put all of their information in one bucket. Another option is if you have a blog site and you wanted to have every blogger have their own S3 bucket. Those are just options that you could have. Or if you have an HR department and the HR department stores all of their files, they could just click save on an application that you've created, and boom, the file gets sent to a specified bucket. These are all ideas or examples of when you would use the SDKs versus the command line, or even using the console. All right, so getting back, I'm going to type in S3 list buckets. Make sure the B in buckets is capitalized. And then I'm going to type in function ERR data. So I'm passing in the variables error and data. The reason why I'm doing that is when I print the results onto the console, if it errors, I want to know why it errored and the type of error. If it passes, I want to see that the data was successfully created, or I want to see the output. So I'm just going to type if ERR console.log, and console.log is basically printing to your terminal screen. Console.log err.stack. Then next, I'm going to type in else, and then console.log data. So I want to see that output. Next, I'm going to hit save. And if I go back to my terminal, I'm going to clear the screen. Then what I'm going to type in next is node basic.js. And then there you go. One thing with when we work with Node, you have to type in Node before you type in the name of your file. You'll have to do that every time, or else it just won't work. So you can see all of the buckets that are listed currently in my S3. You can also see the creation date. So it's very similar to what you would see if we went into the console, or what we saw when we were using the command line interface. The next thing that we would want to do is let's create a new bucket. And when we create the new bucket, we are going to use that UUID that we entered in before. All right, so the next thing that we're going to do is we are going to create a bucket. We're going to create an object for that bucket, and then we're going to put them both into the S3. So let us comment this section out. If I go up here, the first thing I'm going to add is I'm going to add a variable for a bucket name. The reason why I'm doing that is so that I can use that UUID that we are bringing in from the Node Package Manager. So to do that, I'm going to type in my name plus UUID.v4. And again, this generates a random string of letters, numbers, and dashes so that we ensure that our bucket has a unique name. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to type in s3.createBucket. And then I'm going to use that bucket name we just created. Now, everything that I'm typing in is case sensitive, so you want to make sure that you are typing everything in as I am, so that you're not running into any issues when you run your program. Next, we are going to type in var data. And what we're doing here is we are creating a file called testfile.html, and then we're going to put something into the body of that file so that we can put it into the bucket. So to do that, we are going to type in capital bucket, and bucket name, and then our key is going to be, we'll say test file.html. And then what we enter in our body, which will be the actual body of the document, can be anything you want, but I'm going to type in hello Alston again. So now that we have all of that, the next step is to put this s3.object. We're going to put this testfile.html into the bucket, and to do that, we're going to type in s3.create object. Then we're going to use that data we just created. Then I'm going to copy and paste this. Alright, so with any luck, after I save it, clear the screen, and run node basic.js. Ooh, an error. What is that? s3.create object is not a function. Oh, I know what I did wrong here. So the error that I made was it should be put object, not create object. And if I hit save, and then we try this again, and we've got success. We know that we have success because we have this E tag here. We can also verify that if we list the buckets. So I'm just going to unhide that, uncomment that out, and I'm going to comment this out, this section. Click save. And then if I scroll up a little bit, we can see I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 buckets. When I run the node basic, I should have 13 buckets. We count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So my math is off here. But it does look like we added that bucket, which is good. Another way that we could verify it is if we brought up the console, and every time we make a change, we hit refresh, we can see the changes that have been made. So what should we do next? We can, we can list objects within a bucket. And so to do that, I'm just going to comment all of this out. I'm going to push this way down as well. And so to list objects that are in a bucket, we can type in var for parameters. And then we need to specify the bucket name. We do that by typing in bucket. And then I'm going to use a bucket that we've seen before. Alston test bucket 1992. And then next I'm going to type in s3.list objects. Then enter in those parameters. and then another function for output, both error handling and success. If console.log. And as you can see, it returns index.html from the Alston test bucket 1992. And as I mentioned, we can verify that by bringing up, we could verify that by bringing up the AWS console and showing that it worked. All right, so if we go here, I'm going to refresh. You can see we have a number of new buckets. If I click Alston 1992, I have that index2.html file, and there that is. So that worked successfully, which is good. It's always a good thing. The next thing I want to do, let's delete a bucket. All right, so the final thing that we want to do today is we want to delete a bucket. And to delete a bucket, it's very similar to listing objects. You need to have the parameters, and you also need to, instead of having list objects, we need to enter in delete bucket. So I'm just going to delete Alston test bucket 1992, and then I'm going to type in delete bucket. And we'll see if that works. Clear the screen. And there you go. So we know that it worked because it gives us the empty parentheses here. And then we can verify that it worked if we go down and copy the list buckets command. And let's see, we'll get rid of all of this. And we will instead enter in list buckets. So I'm going to save that. And then if we run node basic.js, you can see Alston test bucket 1992 is no longer there. So that's really it for this tutorial. In the next tutorial, we are going to create buckets and objects once again, but we are going to make them world readable so that you can access it from a website. Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon.